morning, everybody. I am so sorry I'm late. Had some technical issues. Tried something new. Wanted to share some pictures and videos during our live this morning, but that didn't work out. So, that's what happens. And we're just going to continue on and have a wonderful live anyways. Okay, so let me move some stuff around after all that stuff. And how is everybody doing this morning? Hopefully you've had a wonderful Friday morning and are looking forward to the weekend and maybe have something great planned. Okay, so today's Facebook Live is on kids and dogs. Who thought getting a dog while you had little kids was a great idea? Your kids have been asking for a dog for a long time, and maybe your old dog passed away and the house is just not the same without a dog in it. Everyone is so excited for the big day, or maybe you've kept it a secret and are going to surprise your kids with a dog, and then this bundle of fur comes home, whether you chose to get an adult rescue dog or you chose to get a puppy. This bundle of fur comes home, and very quickly, it isn't quite what you pictured. The kids were supposed to help, of course, with exercise and feeding and training, but they're kids. And, they're excited for about a week, and then they're like, meh, we got other stuff to do. And because you didn't have enough to do already, now it's like having another child. You have to clean up after this child. You have to take care of this child. You have to train this child. So all of a sudden, a dog has become one more thing added to your already busy life. Who has time for that? On top of this, the dog is chewing on the kids' toys, which is causing a lot of screaming. The kids are crying because the dog is biting and ripping their clothes. So thank you very much for joining me this morning. And I'm going to tell you about my life with dogs and kids, or child, and give you some suggestions on stuff you can do to maybe make life a little better. My name is Paula Hoger. I am the owner of Shake-a-Paw Dog Training. I currently have a 12-year-old son, a 1-year-old Border Collie, and an 11-year-old Border Collie. And I'm going to share with you what I've learned over the past 20 years as a dog trainer and 12 years as a parent. So every dog and child relationship is different and depends on a lot of factors. The age of your child and their temperament, for starters. Some kids are more rough and tumble and are not going to get all freaked out when the dog bites them. And some children are going to be very upset when the dog bites them or very hurt. So you've got to really know what your child can handle. And of course, age. What I allow my puppy to do with my 12-year-old son, and my puppy's now a year-old, is not what I would have allowed to do with my puppy to do with Logan when he was a year and a half and I got my first Border Collie. And I probably wouldn't allow this puppy to behave the way she was if she was 80 pounds instead of 30 pounds. So that's why every situation is really different. So like I'm saying, the size and temperament of your dog. If I had some breeds that could be a little harder on my child, like let's say an Australian cattle dog, I wouldn't let them play the same way with my child that I let my 30-pound Border Collie. If I had a 4-pound Yorkie, I definitely wouldn't allow them to interact the way they are because my child could hurt the Yorkie. So you're really always judging on the situation. There's no such thing as these are the rules for dogs and kids. And then, of course, there's the boy-girl children, and this goes back to the temperament of your child. And this is a very big generalization, and I'm not trying to say anybody's kids should act like this. But here are the tendencies. Boys tend to be rough and tumble. There's a reason boys get bitten more often than girls because, let's face it, boys can make you crazy. I have a child, I say it out of love, but it's oh so true. Girls tend to love the dog, and sometimes they can love a little too much. Hugging and kissing and picking up and dressing up. And some dogs will love this situation, but there are dogs that don't. For example, when Logan was about 8-9 months old, we had my parents' chocolate lab stay with us for a month. Gazoo was a wonderful dog, and by this time he was 11, so he was mellow. And I don't have a picture of Logan without Gazoo in it because Gazoo was attached. He never left Logan's side. Logan could do anything. Not that I would permit anything, but Logan, it didn't matter. Gazoo loved it. Logan would not do the same things to my other dogs as he would do to Gazoo, because Gazoo was always there. Always, can you touch me? Can you touch me? I'm happy with you touching me. That is such a lab personality, and definitely wasn't the rest of my dogs. And my dogs were all fine with Logan, but they didn't need to be touching him all the time or want to be touched all the time. Unfortunately, I've had a couple of clients who I've had to recommend they place the dog because they couldn't get in one case, it was their 5-year-old daughter wouldn't stop hugging and picking up the dog. And the dog was 10, 11, 12 pounds. And the dog was starting to growl and starting to snap. And the bite, it was just a matter of time before the dog took a snap at the kid. So in this case, I said, either figure out how to make your daughter stop or place the dog, because it's going to end poorly. And once the dog has a bite history, you can't really find him a home. So it's better to do it before it happens than after the fact. I remember hearing on the moms group in Kempville, somebody said, "Oh, my dog bit my child. Should we keep the dog?" And I'm like, no, no. If your dog bit your child because your child behaves in a certain way and your child's not going to stop behaving that way, putting that dog back in your house is asking for something worse to happen. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person. But the best choice for everybody involved is to find a dog a home without children so that he can go live his life and your child can safely live their life, right? Not all dogs can handle children. Living with children is a huge challenge. So sometimes what I suggest is buy your child a stuffy that looks just like your dog. Even spend the money and get a great big stuffy. And explain to the child, especially at the age of 5, it's hard to explain things, that the dog might not like it, and to take all that energy, all that love, and use it on the stuffy. And sometimes that's worked really well. So I'm going to go in from that comment, I'm going to go into saying the following. Your child needs to respect your dog. Your dog is not a stuffed animal. Your dog has an entity and feelings and emotions. Your dog is doing the best they can with the information they have. Your dog is not being bad. They're just being a dog. It's really hard, especially for toddlers, to understand not to grab at the dog or pull at the dog. It's a work in progress, and your job is to manage it so it goes as best as possible. I'll be honest, my first dog, which I'll talk about in a minute, my first border collie came to me when Logan was 1.5 years old. They don't have a great relationship. They're fine together, but they don't love each other. Where my next 2 dogs, he did have a great relationship with. Could be they never would have, no matter what. It could be Logan went through the age when Iggy was really young of, grabbing at Iggy and falling on Iggy and stuff like that. And Iggy just started to keep his distance because that made him uncomfortable. Iggy was also a super bitey puppy. So it was really hard to let them interact because he'd just bite, bite, bite. So all those things created, they don't have that really close relationship that Logan proceeded to have with the next 2 dogs. Like with any dog training, the first step is figuring out what you want. Keep in mind, freedom is easier to give than to take away. I start with teaching I strongly suggest, even if you haven't crate trained and are having a baby, make sure your dog understands how to be confined comfortably, meaning they're not losing their minds because you've never done this before. So either behind a baby gate or crate trained. This way, if things go wrong or the world gets too exciting, like your kids are having a meltdown and the dog's starting to act up, it's easy to separate the dog out of the situation. I think crate training is not only useful, but totally necessary with kids. For example, a situation like a birthday party. Even my adult dogs get put away when my son has his birthday party. We're lucky. My son's birthday's in the summer. The kids come over and it's in the backyard. Usually there's water balloons. So I've got a bunch of kids running around my backyard. Adding a couple of border collies to that probably wouldn't end out well. So the dogs go in their runs with big bones. They sit there happily chewing their bones while the kids have a great time. And then as the party winds down and the kids are at the table eating their cake, then I can let the dogs out and they have their toys. So they just wait for people to kick their ball. Um, and the other part with a bunch of children in your house, there'll be the regular kids that come over and you know what they're like with your dogs and your dogs know them. So you might, depending on the age, depending on how they get along, you might give them a little freedom, like let your dogs in the house. And if they see the kids, they see the kids. But with unknown children, children I don't know, and who have not spent time in my house, my dogs do not ever have access to them. That means the dogs either stay with me or get put away. They're not here that long. For example, at the birthday party, you have no idea how a child's going to react when he gets licked or if the dog bumps him. You have no idea what the child's relationship is with dogs. So I would rather play it safe than put my dog and that poor child into a situation that could end up poorly. I remember a friend of mine, they had kids over at their house and one of the dogs jumped on the kid and scratched him right here. It was in the summer. They were wearing tank tops and it was a scratch. It was not a bite. It was totally the dog jumped on him and did this. But when the child went home, the parents thought he'd been bitten and that ended up ugly. So as much as possible in those situations, I protect my dogs. I always protect my dogs, but I very much do in those situations. Next job I want to teach my dogs is to be calm near children. I currently have border collies, so their calm is not their state of being. So, and because they're herders, which means they like to herd things, running children is hard. When I first had Logan, I had 3 big dogs. I had an Akita, a Chesapeake, and a Siberian Husky. My dogs were all fine with kids. They'd been exposed to kids by having friends come over with children and stuff like that. But it's a whole new thing where now you're living with the child. Um, when I started with teaching them to be calm when the child was on the floor, because as adults, you don't really spend a whole lot of time on the floor. And if you do, you're usually spending that time on the floor to play with the dog. So the dogs, like now, if you lie on the floor, the dogs are going to come over and jump on top of you, which is perfectly fine. I have a 12-year-old son. If he lies on the floor, he wants to play with the dogs. But when you bring a baby home, you need the dog to understand when you lie on the floor or sit on the floor with the baby, they got to go do their own thing. So it's just understanding that difference at the different ages of your children. So I would sit on the floor and I'd have Logan in front of me doing floor time. And then the dogs would be around me in a down. And I'd have a bowl of kibble and I'd be rewarding them for staying in their down. They quickly learned to just hang out when Logan was on the floor. And this started allowing the dogs to get comfortable right from the beginning. You know how it is. A baby comes home, barely moves. A month later, they might be lifting their head. A month later, they might be rolling over. And all those steps are hard for the dogs. So we did this every day. The dogs got very, very comfortable with this. One of my dogs, my Siberian Husky, had exhibited some really strange behavior with newborn babies. It never got dangerous, but I wasn't sure. I was pretty sure it was prey drive, and I was pretty sure I had to be super careful with my own child, and he never got access to a newborn again, of course. So this exercise of him being in a down while the baby started to learn to move got him comfortable with that without ever having access to the child. So I had pictures, but this is what I was trying to figure out to do a Zoom call and it didn't work. So I'll post the pictures in my in the comments afterwards. Crawling is the next challenge for dogs. And I had it happen with one of my own dogs, and I've worked with a number of clients who have this exact same problem. The baby is now moving, and I think it's the baby stares and crawls slowly, and the dogs get all freaked out if they're lying on their bed and the child's like moving towards them. Some dogs get super uncomfortable. Like I said, I'm not sure why. With us, it was our Chesapeake. At first, when I saw Splash becoming uncomfortable when Logan would crawl towards her, I would redirect Logan or pick him up. And this is what everybody does. But here's what I quickly realized. I was actually reinforcing her discomfort because when she got nervous, I removed the source of the tension, which reinforced her for getting nervous. But I wasn't giving her the tools to deal with the problem. So this is the new plan we came up with. Logan would start crawling towards her. I would call her. She'd get up and come towards me and get rewarded. And then I would say, okay, and she was allowed to go back and lie on her pillow or leave the room, whatever she chose. This gave her the tools to get rid of the discomfort. Eventually, Logan would start crawling towards her and she would look at him and get up and walk by him and leave the room. She was uncomfortable, but she learned how to fix the discomfort in a really safe way. It got to the point where when Logan would crawl towards her, and by this time he was starting to almost walk, she would lick him on the way by. And then he would fall over, and we'd call it the tongue takedown. As he started to walk and he's a little unstable, she would give him a little lick on the way by and he would fall down. You know, it doesn't matter at that age, they fall down on their little padded bum and he would laugh and she would leave and it was all good. So what could have become a really serious problem, and I've, like I said, seen it with piles of clients, became a fun game for them. I got my first border collie, like I was saying, Iggy, when Logan was 1.5 years. I had a plan on how to create a harmonious house with a 1.5-year-old child who was super active and a baby border collie. Logan started to walk at 10 months, so by 1.5 years, he was running. If you listen to my stuff, I'm all about management with puppies. My son and dog were not loose together without active supervision. And by active supervision, I mean I am interacting with both of them. They're not both sitting in the kitchen while I'm making dinner. So my son and dog were not loose together without active supervision until Iggy was over 6 months old. I had a daily routine that gave both of them the attention they needed and an opportunity to manage appropriate interactions. It worked out great. Kids at this age nap a lot and gave me plenty of exercise to train and plenty of time to exercise and train Iggy. And when Logan was awake and moving around, Iggy spent a lot of time in the X-Pen, which he would have anyways because he was a baby. Iggy was super herdy and very bitey. So we had to work really hard at him watching Logan move and not wanting to chase him down. We would play games like Iggy would sit on the couch next to me and he'd be on leash and I'd be rewarding him. I'm not holding him there. I'm rewarding him for choosing to stay there. And at first I would get Logan to walk by calmly. And Logan loved it because he got to help me work with the dog. So Iggy was learning how to stay calm with motion, and Logan was having a great time playing with helping me interact with the dog. So at first Logan would walk, and then I got Logan to walk faster, and then I got Logan to run, and then I got Logan to run screaming, and then I got Logan to push his little cars, which made Iggy's head explode. So we would play this every day, starting easy and working up every day, working up a little further till Logan and Iggy could be loose in the kitchen and Iggy would just do his own thing or sleep on a pillow and didn't feel the need to chase Logan down every time he moved. Then we had to move the game outside. Iggy came home in January, so we got to work on this before the snow melted. Then we got to work outside and we had to start right at the beginning. As soon as we were outside, Iggy was like, whoa! So we used a dog bed. I'd sit on the deck on a chair. He'd be on his raised dog bed next to me, and I'd reward him while Logan ran around the yard, kicked a ball, whatever. Interesting note. The outside stuff Iggy had to be reminded every spring until he was 4 years old. During the winter, because inside he didn't get to practice, it's not the same, right? Logan doesn't run around the same inside as he does outside. And Iggy would lose the ability to control himself once spring hit. So every spring we'd go back to the bed, and it would only take a few days of reminding him how to stay calm while Logan ran around, and then he'd be fine and they could go out in the yard together. The other thing I did with them was Iggy, like a lot of dogs, he'd retrieve, but when you go, he'd leave the ball on the floor or on the ground, but when you go pick it up, he'd snap at your hands. He stopped it with me because right away, if he snapped at my hands, I would back away. And eventually he understood if he ever wanted me to throw the ball again, he had to stop doing that. But the problem was with Logan, he'd get excited and reach for the toy, right? So what I changed it to was a holy roller, which is a big airy ball. And that way Logan could kick it, never had to reach for it. And that worked much better. And to this day in the backyard, the dogs use a holy roller. I find it super convenient when I have company because I don't have to worry about the people grabbing for the toy, the dog grabbing at the people. The kicking works much better. Oh, here we are. I have comments that I hadn't seen because my screen's all messed up. Good morning, Barb. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Sheila. Debbie, you have a toddler. Toddler unseen, parent in between. Heard this years ago with my kids and now grandkids. Oh, good. Good job. Sherry, couldn't agree more. Good morning, Sherry. Okay. Yes, where were we? Oh, and then came Speck. So Speck, Logan was now 6 years old, wanted to participate much more in raising our new puppy. This time his job was helping me train the puppy to hang out in his pen and on his bed by rewarding him. I have a bowl of kibble that sits on my kitchen counter, and Logan would be like, can I reward the dog? Yes, you can. I reward my dogs a pile when they're babies for sitting in their X pens quietly, playing with their toys while we go about our day. So Logan would do that. He'd do that for me. He loved doing that. By throwing the food in the pen, Logan was able to reward Speck, but didn't have to deal with the mouth. Most little kids, I find, when you try to get them to reward a dog, they're like, they really want to, but the tongue's moving and the teeth are moving. And if the dog's got their mouth open, they're like, I can't put my hand near that. They don't like to be licked or the goober. So having your kid try to feed your dog, I find, always ends up poorly because then they're moving and then the dog starts to grab at the food and it just ends up poorly. So I liked Logan being able to throw the kibble in the X pen because it gave him a really easy way to reward Speck. Speck was still being rewarded by Logan, but I didn't have to deal with that whole mouth thing. I do play name game with kids and puppies. I always introduce this to my clients who have little kids because it's a great way, again, for the kids to interact with the dog. Name game, for those that don't know, is you say the dog's name, you take a step back, and you reward them. The change I make for little kids is I have them put the cookie between their feet. Because again, this gives them a really easy way for them to reward the dog. They feel accomplished. And the dog learns to come into the child and look at their feet instead of come into the child and start jumping on them for food because of timing and stuff like that. So as soon as they say the dog's name, they put a cookie between their feet. Now the dog comes in and goes to their feet. Now, we would like our dogs to listen to our children, but our children are children. It's hard enough to get adults to pay attention to the details. It's pretty well impossible for kids to do it. I want my dog and child to have a good relationship. And for me, that means they get along, they can live together, they like each other ideally. But I don't expect my dog to listen to my child. Even my son, who's 12, the dogs still don't listen to him because he might say their name 10 times. So the dogs are like, yeah, whatever, we ignore you. And that's perfectly fine with me. And honestly, I expect my dogs to listen to me. I expect my dogs to listen to my husband. That's about it. I don't really feel my dogs should be expected to listen to other people. Do they? Sure. But do I expect it? Meh. this whole, you should listen. No, I did all the training. Why would they listen to a stranger? So, but that's a whole different story. Okay. So the reason they don't listen to kids, for a cue to work, you have to maintain criteria. The biggest criteria is when I say the cue, I expect you to perform the behavior. If you don't perform the behavior, I have to figure out why, like you were overfaced, the world is too exciting, I haven't trained it as well as I thought, or I have to stop you from, like if I say, if I'm working on sit and stay and the dog gets up to move, I have a leash on so I can stop them. Kids are not going to do all that. They might play name game. They might enjoy playing name game, but the dog is not going to listen to them. So just always keep that in mind. Kids are kids, dogs are dogs, and expect them all to act like that. Sorry, coming back to my notes because I got distracted. Speck and Logan had a lot more interaction when Speck was younger than Iggy and Logan, partly because Logan was that much older, partly because Speck never, ever bit. He is the first puppy I have ever met who never put his mouth on us. So it was really easy to leave them playing because Logan wasn't getting bit. Logan wasn't screaming. Still very supervised interactions, still playing with a border collie, still going to chase him down if I'm not careful. But I did allow a whole lot more playing, partly because of age, partly because of the lack of biting. So last but not least came the beautiful little Wicca. Now Logan is 12 years old and he became a large part of raising the puppy. And when I post videos and stuff underneath, I have a video of Logan playing crate games with Wicca, Logan tugging with Wicca. You know, he actively participated in training. And especially Wicca came home a month after lockdown started. So the whole family was home. All the other puppies were raised mostly with me home alone, with my husband and son being home in the evening. But now they're home all the time, creating its own unique set of challenges. Logan was great at helping take Wicca out to the bathroom and playing with Wicca. But Logan is still a 12-year-old boy and doesn't always make the right choices. This time my job was to create good management that Logan could easily perform to prevent bad behaviors from being created. For example, Wicca started playing keep away. Puppies do that. She goes out in our front yard for a pee and was off leash, and she started going, I can pick up a crab apple, I can pick up a piece of mulch, and you can't catch me. Logan would take Wicca out and get super frustrated when Wicca wouldn't come when he called, and then he would chase her, which would lead to horrible keep away if I didn't manage it. So I was always, even though he went out with her, I always needed, okay, how did it go? What went well? What went poorly? And I would watch them through the window just in case. Not every single time, but at least once a day to see how it was going. Puppies change all the time, so behaviors come up all the time. She did it to me and my husband, but we didn't chase, so it wasn't nearly as exciting. So I came up with a new plan to solve this. We created a reward station at our front door. Every time we went to the front door, Wicca got rewarded. So what ended up happening, we wouldn't call her. When it was time to go inside, we'd go to the front door, and there was enough value for being at the front door that she would run up and get rewarded. Yes, we did keep her on leash for a few days, possibly a week, while she built value for the front door. And so we didn't allow her to continue earning value for playing keep away. Meanwhile, while she was on leash, I didn't want Logan taking her out because I didn't want her pulling, and I didn't feel Logan was ready to not let her pull. Yes, he was disappointed, but I explained to him that her not pulling on leash and her not coming when called were things that we needed to work on, and that was something we needed to work through. What I did do is get Logan to start playing advanced collar grab games with her. Anybody who's seen that video, basically the dog's off leash. You walk up, you give it a cookie, you walk away. You walk up, you give it a cookie, you walk away. Teaching your dog that when I come up to you, good things happen. So he started playing this with her every day with supervision. Meanwhile, I prevented him from being put into situations where she got to play keep away. Within a week, he was back to take her out for a pee. So hopefully all these stories of my children or my child with my dogs has given you some ideas of things you can work on with your dogs and kids, or kid and dogs, or kids and dogs. Having a child of my own and having worked with many clients with children of all ages has given me a pretty good understanding of possible pitfalls and tools to help get to help making getting a dog with kids the enjoyable experience it should be instead of the nightmare it can quickly become. And that really sucks because you wait for this for so long, and then all of a sudden you're like, what was I thinking? I speak to so many clients that their dog's 3, 4 months old and they look haggard. They're tired. The kids don't want the puppy. They want nothing to do with it. The dog is frustrated also. Nobody's happy, and it doesn't have to be like that. If you are ready to get help with your current dog or thinking of getting a new dog soon, message me for details of us working together. We start by figuring out what you want. My job is not to tell you what's right and what's wrong or what you shouldn't do. Only you can decide that. My job is to give you the pros and cons, information to help you make the best decision for your family and for what you want. I clearly showed you my choices were completely different when Logan was 1.5 years than when he was 6 and when he was 12. And from those decisions, I create a training plan to help you achieve those goals. So guys, that's it for today. Hopefully you had a great time. I did. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again soon. I will stick around for a few minutes, so if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments, and have a wonderful weekend.